Hello, accounting superstars. Welcome to the channel. So glad you're here. This is the place to learn accounting. Today, what we're going to do is learn how to figure out the percentage complete when you're using the percentage of completion method. The key is to be ultra organized. If you're ultra organized, it's really pretty straightforward. There's two ways to do it. There's one way called an output measure, and we're going to do that. And we'll use miles completed, because what's going on here with when we get to it construction, they're building a highway today, and they're building 5 miles of highway in the next 4 months. Now there's a second way to do this, and it's called an input measure, and usually people use cost to cost method. That is, they estimate the cost to build the project and how much cost have they expended to date, and so on and so forth. So we're going to do both examples, but before we do, I want to show you a picture. This is off my deck this morning. We live at 8,500 feet in Morrison, Colorado. Absolutely beautiful view. And down below those clouds is the city of Denver. And of course you can't see it because of all the clouds, but beautiful picture. So let's get started here. So what we're doing is when we get to a construction, they're building 5 miles of highway in 4 months. And if they get the job done, they're going to get paid a grand total of $500,000. Now, the way when we get to a construction is going to determine how much they get done is they're going to measure, well, how many miles did we build during a month? Like if they built 1 mile or 4 miles or 3 miles, and we'll keep track of it that way. So here we go. Let's get started. The first line that we need here is the total miles completed to date. June was a very, very slow month for when we get to a construction. They had a hard time getting crews together, getting the materials together, getting things lined up. During the month of June, they did not build any highway at all. They were just getting things together, ready to go. So miles completed during the month of June, it's going to be 0. And so the percentage completed as of the end of June is 0%. And since they didn't complete anything, they are going to recognize 0 revenue. Now, the other lines here, I'm going to fill in, and they may not make much sense at this point, but they will here in a month or two. So the miles completed during this month only of June, well, 0. And the percent completed during the month, 0. And so the revenue recognized during the month of June only, 0. A lot of zeros here, easy. Well, they didn't get any work done. They didn't build any miles of highway. So along comes July. And in July, we talk to the engineer and we say, hey, engineer, how many miles of highway were built during the month of July? And so the engineer says, well, we built 1 mile. It was a slow start, but at least we got started here and we're making some progress. So the percentage complete here, so they built 1 mile out of 5. 1 mile out of 5, so 1 divided by 5. If you use your calculator, you would get 20%. So the engineer here is saying we're about 20% done with this job. And so the total revenue recognized to date is going to be 20% of the grand total revenue. So 20% of $500,000 is $100,000. Miles completed month only. Well, during the month of July, they completed 1 mile. During June, they didn't complete any miles at all. Percent completed during the month only. Well, they got 20% completed during the month of July. So the amount of revenue that they're going to recognize in the month of July is $100,000. So this bottom line number here is the most important number, because this is the amount of revenue that when we get to a construction is going to recognize on their income statement. Moving on to the month of August. At the end of August, we talk to the engineer and we say, well, how many miles were done during August? And the engineer says, well, we built a grand total to date, a grand total of 4 miles to date. And that includes July too. So So 1 in July and 3 in August, which adds up to a grand total of 4. So the grand total percent done would be 4 miles out of 5 miles. 4 miles out of 5 miles, which would be 80% done. So the total revenue recognized to date would be $500,000 times 80%. Now, the miles completed during the month only. Well, during August, they completed 3 miles. And the reason why I know that is because in July they completed 1, and at the end of August they had a grand total of 4, so that means they must have built 3 in August. Percent complete during the month only. Well, in July they were 20% done. In August they were 80% done. So that means they must have completed 60% during the month of August. Revenue recognized for the month only. Well, in July we recognized $100,000. In August we recognized $400,000. So that means in August only would be $300,000. So revenue recognized during the month only. In July $100,000, August $300,000, for a grand total of $400,000. So along comes September, and in September we asked the engineer, well, how many miles are completed as of the end of September? And the engineer says 5. We've got the job done. By the end of September, the job is completely done. We have all 5 miles complete, which means that as of the end of September, we are 100% complete. The total revenue recognized to date is going to be the grand total $500,000. So coming down here to the last couple of lines, the miles completed during the month only. So during the month of September, they only completed 1 mile. They had 4 done in August, 5 done in September. That means in September they got 1 done. And the percent completed during the month of September only, that would be 1 mile divided by 5. 1 mile divided by 5, which equals 20%. So the amount of revenue that we're going to recognize during the month of September is going to be 20% of the grand total contract year. So 20% of $500,000, $100,000. At this point, it's really good to double check your work. And what you want to do is this line here, percent completed during the month only, you want to make sure that this all adds up to 100%. And so let's check. So 20% plus 60% plus another 20%, that's 100%. And then the last line, you want to make sure it all adds up to the contract amount. So 0 plus 100,000 and 300,000 and another 100,000. If you add those all up, it does equal the contract. So we know this worked out great. Now this output measure, miles completed, works really great when the highway miles are all very similar. We're not going through the Rocky Mountains where we have to do a lot of digging and blasting and things could take forever. This method works great. At the same time, a lot of companies find it better to use another method called the cost-to-cost basis. Cost-to-cost means how much do we think it's going to cost us to build this project and how much have we spent so far. At the end of June, we talk to the engineer and we say, engineer, how much do you think it's going to cost us to complete this project as of the end of June? And the engineer says, well, I think it's going to cost us $400,000. That's going to be the entire cost for the entire project. And so we ask the engineer, we say, what's the total project cost to date? What have we spent in the month of June? And the engineer says $40,000. $40,000, what we've spent so far, divided by the estimated total, and we'll find out the estimated percent complete, the percentage complete to date. So the amount of revenue that we're going to recognize is 10% of the contract amount. So 10% of the contract amount, $50,000. So we'll fill in these last three lines here. They may not make a lot of sense right now, but they'll make more sense as we do July and August and September. The project cost for the month only, $40,000. Percent complete month only, 10%. And the revenue recognized during the month only, here we go, $50,000. Revenue recognized month only is important because this is the amount of revenue that's going to appear on the income statement for the month of June. Moving on to July. Well, we talk to the engineer at the end of July and we say, hey engineer, how much do you think it's going to cost for this entire project now that we've been into it for a couple of months? Well, the engineer says, well, I've got some bad news. I think it's going to cost us $450,000. The estimate was $400,000, but I had to change my estimate because things just have not been going according to plan. We asked the engineer, what's the actual total project cost to date? How much have we spent during the months of June and July? And the engineer replies, we have spent a grand total of $180,000. Okay, so what is the percentage complete to date? Well, all we're going to do is take this grand total amount of actual cost to date and divide it by the estimated cost for the entire project, and we'll see how much we have done. So we guess we're about 40% done with this project. So the amount of revenue recognized to date is going to be 40% times the contract amount. That's $200,000. Now the project cost for the month only. Well, in June we spent $40,000. In July we had spent a grand total of $180,000 for both June and July. So it looks like in July we spent $140,000. There we go. So the percent complete during the month only. Well, in June we were 10% complete. In July we were 40% complete. So it looks like we probably did 30% in July because 10 plus 30 equals 40. So what's the amount of revenue that we're going to recognize during the month of July only? It's going to be 30% of the contract amount, 30% of the contract amount. And another way to figure it out is to take the total revenue to date minus the revenue claimed in the prior period. So there we go, $150,000. Moving on to August. So the month of August has come and gone, and we're at the end of August, and we talk to the engineer again, and we say, hey engineer, how much do you think it's going to cost us to do this entire project? I mean, from start to finish. And the engineer says, well, I've got some good news. It's going to cost less than we thought. We had a good month in August. Things worked out fabulous. And so we think things are going to cost a little bit less. And then we ask the engineer, well, how much have you spent in grand total on this project so far from start until here we are now? And the engineer says, well, we have spent so far a grand total of $350,000. Okay, so we figure out, well, what is the percentage complete to date? Well, the percentage complete to date would be $350,000 divided by $410,000. So it looks like we are 85% of the way done here. So the total revenue recognized to date, that's going to be 85% of $500,000. So there's the revenue recognized to date. Now the project cost for the month only, here's how we figure it out. Well, back in July, we had spent $180,000. And by the end of August, we have spent $350,000. So during August, we must have spent the difference between those two, $170,000. And the project, the percent completed during the month, well, in July, we were 40% complete. August, we're 85% complete. So it looks like we probably did 45% of the job in August. So 40 and 85, the difference between those two is 45. So the revenue recognized during the month only, there's two ways to do it. We could go 45% times 500,000, or we could just simply find the difference between August and July in regard to the revenue. 425 minus 200, and that would give us the answer also. So there's two ways to do it. And it's 225,000, and this number is important because this bottom line number is the number that's going to show up on the income statement. Going on to the month of September. So the month of September. So we talked to the engineer at the end of September, and we asked the engineer, engineer, what is the estimated total cost to do this whole project? And the engineer says, well, we don't need an estimate because we're done. We're done with the project. There's no more estimating. For estimated cost for the entire project, I'm going to put not applicable. And so we asked the engineer, how much did it end up costing? The engineer says a grand total of $420,000. And so we are now 100% complete. And the total revenue recognized to date, well, all the revenue, it's all done. And the project cost for the month only, well, all we're going to do is look here at actual total project cost to date and just find the difference between the two. Back in August, we had spent a total of $350,000. By the end of September, we had spent a total of $420,000, so we must have spent $70,000 during the month of September. Think about it here, $350,000 plus 70 equals $420. So what's the percentage complete here? The percent completed during the month only. Well, in August, we were 85% complete. In September, we were 100% complete. So we must have got 15% complete during the month of September. So how much revenue are we recognizing during the month of September only? There's two ways to figure it out. One way is we can look at the total revenue recognized to date, which is 500,000 and 425, and find the difference between those two numbers and say, hey, that's 75 grand. Or we could go 15% times 500,000. Either way, we'll get the same answer. So there you go. Now, just like the example up above, it's a good idea to check your work. Make sure that percent complete month only, make sure this 10% and the 30% and the 45% and the 15%. Make sure it adds up to 100%. In fact, we ought to double check here. 10 and 30 is 40, plus another 45 is 85, plus 15, that's 100%. And then the revenue recognized for the month only, it's good to add across horizontally and make sure it adds up to 500,000, and I think it does. There's 300,000 and another 200,000. It does. It adds up. So you want to double check that. Don't go on without double checking that. So ladies and gentlemen, here you learned two ways to do this. You learned the cost to cost basis, which is very, very common. You have to estimate, well, how much is it going to cost for the entire project and how much have we spent to date. And the other method was an output measure, like miles completed. Maybe it would be the number of houses built. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this video, if this thing helped you out, let me know. Hit that like button. Let me know what topics you want to learn about. Have a great day, and over and out.